as we shut down. Currently this compressor is down and we had issues with it flooding out, and we're going to go through the process of trying to stop the flood. Right now the evaporator is absolutely full of liquid. Everything is heavily migrated in the system. To fix that, we got to get the drain and the feed valve to fully close so that we can pump the refrigerant out of the two-phase side of the system into the liquid line. Part of the issue that feeds into is the liquid refrigerant has flushed all the oil out of our compressor and out of our oil sump. Where all this began was over the weekends. The chiller on the other side, it's the same exact thing as this one. This is a YCIV, it has 3 circuits. As of Friday, all 3 circuits on the other chiller were completely online. We were running fine, we didn't have any issues. By Saturday evening, the call came in that something had happened to chiller 2 on the other side. Now these 2 chillers share the whole system. When our team got on site, they found that circuit 1 had blown oil everywhere and it dumped a charge. Chiller 1, circuit 1 was tripping on overcurrent. It had a real bad growl at startup, and that's when I found that it was having the flooding issue. My discharge line was getting cold as it was running. It was real bad flood. So we've migrated a lot of refrigerant into the evaporator. I currently believe that on chiller 1, circuit 1, it's the easiest one to get back online in the shortest amount of time. So we're putting all of our efforts into making that happen. Once we get to where chiller 1 has 2 circuits available to keep up with the loop, that'll give us our 4 circuits mixed with the pony chiller. Then we can completely shut chiller 2 down and start, 1, do the leak repair wherever that's at, and then 2, figure out the overcurrent on circuit 3. Here we got that open. You'll just mid-seat that. We got power plugged in. You ready? We're definitely moving liquid through based off of this bouncing. So one of the big things we're going to be looking for is this hose to stop the bounce. Granted, we should see it on the pressures, and we're already looking better than we were. Ultimately, we just have to get that migrated liquid refrigerant out of that evaporator so that compressor can come in and actually try to maintain the system. Thankfully, we found some oil on site, so we're going to be able to get that pumped into the compressor body. Hopefully, it's enough to get it filled up where we can get a seal on the bolts and actually get some refrigerant moving through this thing and try to get the rest of the oil returned back into the sump. Part of what's making this really tricky is we're severely fighting the rain. It's just kind of dribbling on us as we go, and we're really trying to get this finished before the bottom falls out, because they say it's supposed to, so we'll see. In the vlog, so everybody say hi to yourselves. Well, after we got done swimming here from all the rain, we're back this morning getting set up. So based off of the live stream last night, I'm going to check the discharge ball valve. I need a different wrench to do this. It is definitely open, so we eliminated that concern. The other recommendation was to go ahead and try to swap the IGBTs. This IGBT for compressor 2 has had next to no runtime. It's basically brand new and just been powered up and sitting on standby. IGBT 1 we changed about a year ago, give or take. We're going to rewire compressor 1 into the IGBT for compressor 2 and see if we have any kind of a change. Normally with the noise and some of the symptoms we're having and the overamp issues, I would have already done this, but because it hadn't been that long since we did compressor 1s, I honestly just negated the possibility of this even being a problem, which may prove to be part of my downfall in this scenario, but hey, we're learning. So at this point, we've called everybody possible that I think we could call. We've every supposed expert, every possible person on everybody's call registry. Not a single person has seen this condition before, so we're on the edge of just condemning the compressor, which ultimately is going to end up condemning that circuit entirely. It's not going to get repaired or fixed. It's just we're going to move on. That's going to be the final resolution. But that puts the building in an awkward place because they have that much less capacity, which is really not a good thing. We have one more test we're going to try. We're going to hook up a bypass, and we're going to bypass the coils in the system and run straight from the discharge into the suction and see if that helps create any noticeable difference in the compression on the system. Swapping the IGBT made no difference. I haven't done that update yet. There was zero change in any of the conditions, the sound, the amps, the readings, nothing. So it definitely was not an IGBT issue. So we have a bypass coming off the discharge. It's running down into the suction valve, the suction service valve. And so at this point, we're gonna watch our pressures and just how much fluctuation we have. Because we're bypassing the condenser coil by going through this hose, and then we're coming straight off the flash tank going into the suction on this by opening this valve here. So we're bypassing the evaporator. Oh, we got a positive bump.
Oh wow. That sounds cool. Wow.
Would you look at that?
You made change.
That's the first time we've had that. Okay, let's see what our VSD's doing. We still got high amps. So pull that. Alright, so we shut down the economizer. Oh, would you listen to it? Listen to it. It sounds like we're moving oil. Hey. We're coming down on amps. Pressure's going up. Shutting down now. What the hell? Why did we shut down?
We're about to find out.
What buttons you push? Low suction, superheat. Okay, we knew that. We're okay with that. Okay, so the theory of the vapor lock on the evaporator because of the oil holds true. We broke the vapor lock by opening the economizer. That created a flow. When that flow started, it got everything to shift. I took out the economizer solenoid, which then allowed the flow to continue. And then we started pulling everything off the evaporator. Would you look at that?
Trip.
My head's everywhere. we had success. My head is everywhere. Sorry. This is probably coming through crazy. Alright, so we're going to leave that this next time.
body of it a little bit.
So we've actually got some really incredible results. By doing the bypass of the coils, we got the lock to break and we started to get refrigerant to move. That's when we started to realize other symptoms. So first we found suction thermistor was bad. It was reading several degrees off. That's going to contribute to a superheat and flooding issue. Now, next thing we noticed was the flash tank was full to the point when we manually engaged the economizer, we started to ice over immediately. We've got that to pull down because we're also having a drain valve issue. So what I did is I manually closed the liquid line valve in order to start to stack everything back in the condenser and get everything I can out of the evap. Now, before we started all this and before we got refrigerant to move, because we're creating positive pressure now, by doing what we've done, we're actually having the high side go positive instead of pulling down into a neutral state, basically. Our oil separator is now showing level. Taking that a step further, after I closed this liquid line valve, and we started pulling more off of that evap and stacking it. Initially we were able to get above the bottom sight glass. Now we've got above the top sight glass, but you can tell by looking in there there's a lot of refrigerant stacked in that oil as well. So this is a really good time. We're going to stop. We're going to let the system settle out. I'm going to keep my liquid line valve closed, and my drain valve I feel is working fine. Very confident our level sensor for the flash tank has gone bad. With that going bad, that's going to make the system overfeed the flash tank, and so it's possible that that's how it got us. We didn't flood the evap and migrate in the evap. We stacked everything in the flash tank to the point that it was able to flood the compressor through the economizer line, not the suction line, which the system was never going to have the ability to catch that to begin with. After lunch, we'll see what that oil separator looks like, and we're going to try another start. We're back from lunch and we're getting this thing together, and that made a huge difference. And our oil sight glasses when we left were very foamy, and you can tell there was a lot of refrigerant. You can see how cold that's been and how it's been sweating on the oil separator. But now our oil looks nice and clear, and it's not all murky like it was, or foamy I should say. So it's a really good sign. We're above the top sight glass with standing oil. Now we did add oil to the system, so we're probably high on oil. We know that. We'll remove oil when we get to a point where we feel like that's necessary. At this stage, I'm going to leave the liquid line closed, and we're going to attempt another startup on its own and just kind of let it, see if we can continue to pull that down, and let's see if we continue to drop on discharge pressure. So this analog is tracking with our transducer. We're reading about 40 psi right now. Sounding better and better. What did we cycle down? Motor current? Okay.
We're
making really solid progress. It's a very unorthodox. We're beating that compressor pretty firmly. We are about to take a shift. We're gonna go ahead and start pulling the charge back out of the evaporator again, which we did yesterday, but we've made a lot more progress and we have a lot better understanding as to what's happening and what failed. So now that we actually understand the system a lot better, when we start doing things like pulling the refrigerant off the evap, we can actually do it in a more constructive way. We're really riding the edge of getting this thing completely back online and fully functional. I mean, we're far from where we were. The question is still, can we get the compressor to settle down and catch its groove and do what it's supposed to? And are the bearings and the bolts already too far gone to save? So we have a very oily mixture coming off the bottom of the evap, and then we're going through our capillary tube, running through our capillary, up inside, hitting our discharge. So right now, we've had a lot of really good success with pulling down the evaporator, but we're trying to pull it down more. I've got the suction valve closed so that we're just strictly pulling that. The drain valve is also fully seated, so that's not letting anything by. We're intentionally flashing it as it comes through. We want it to be coming into here as a vapor, and we're trying to remove some of the stress load off the compressor, because the alternative is the compressor has to completely pump this whole thing down on its own, and we're trying to remove that stress by using the recovery machine to do some of that pump down for it. I've also come up with a theory as to why we were losing pressure even though we were running the compressor. We have liquid refrigerant that is stacked into the discharge side of this compressor. These are our screw bolts up here. When this compressor was turning on, it was creating so much turbulence that all the liquid refrigerant in here was beginning to boil off and was being vaporized as it spun. When refrigerant boils, it sucks in heat. There's no legitimate heat source to add heat to this compressor body to feed that refrigerant. Because we couldn't feed the refrigerant heat, it was going to reduce in temperature. This is where, going off of a PT chart, there's a pressure-temperature relationship. As the temperature dropped, it was going to pull the pressure down. So inevitably, we weren't creating a suction on the discharge side of it. We were actually vaporizing all the liquid refrigerant that was standing in here, and due to the vaporization and the heat being drawn because of it, it was forcing our pressure to fall. So we've been compressing and moving, and the bolts have been doing what they're supposed to this entire time. And that pressure drop was indicating to us that we were actually forcing that liquid refrigerant to flash off. There's just so much of it. It turned into seeing a drop in pressure due to a drop in temperature. And we were literally, we were freezing. That's how much liquid is sitting on this. This whole side of the housing was icing over because of the liquid refrigerant boiling off and how rapidly it was boiling. We had the heater running on this overnight, and we look pretty good. We're still below the upper side glass. We're nice and warm on the separator. Pulled down on the evaporator and the compressor yesterday pretty heavily, but we didn't get it down below saturation temp. Something we're thinking about this morning before we do a final fire up. Close the suction valve and then pull straight off of the compressor to just make sure that there's nothing in that compressor when we go to turn it on. We want to minimize that as much as we possibly can. Another good thing is our crankcase heater is doing its job. Compressor body is nice and warm to the touch. Gives me a lot of hope that we may have gotten that liquid refrigerant out of there as much as possible, at least. We'll actually know when we go to turn everything on. We'll open our oil, open our discharge, and then I'm going to crack the liquid and allow a little bit of flow, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to create a deadhead. but it was too much. She's locked. She won't spin at this point. You know, 2.5 days down the drain. We gave it everything we had. It is what it is. It's gonna work out this way. At least we have a definitive answer. You know, we know why it happened. We know the whole sequence from A to B, how everything progressed. We understand that now. And the final resolution was she tried, couldn't do it, and inevitably she lock rotored. And that's it. It's done. So now we can move on.